All right, so today we're going to look at cause and effect, if-then statements. So let's look at a cause and effect here. If it's raining, then it's spring. Is that true in all cases? If it's raining, then it's spring.
Seniors, I sent a survey out to you yesterday. I need to get completed at some point before next week. So if you have time after school today, please take it. It'll take you 2 seconds. Thank you.
If it's raining, then it's spring. That's not necessarily true. If it's raining, then it's cloudy outside. That would be a true statement. That would be fairly necessarily true. If x and y are whole numbers, then their difference is a whole number. When you subtract two whole numbers, is it always a whole number? Yeah. Well, no, not necessarily. Because what if you take 2 minus 4? Those are two whole numbers. What's 2 minus 4? Negative 2. Negative 2 is not a whole number. Whole numbers start at 0 and go up. That's an integer. So that's not necessarily true. If water is heated, then it's boiled. That's not necessarily true. If water is heated, then it gets warmer. Then the particles move faster. Okay? But it doesn't have to boil. If a triangle has a right angle, then it's a right triangle. Every triangle with a right angle is a right triangle. That is the only one on this list that is true. If your favorite color is blue, then you're a good speller. Not necessarily, and I don't even know what one we can come up with there. Okay, we're going to have lots of vocab today. Now, this is not on this first vocab quiz. This will be on the second vocab quiz. Okay, so this first one, when you write down the conditional, you don't have to write this or this. A conditional is an if-then statement that relates a hypothesis to a conclusion. Don't write that other stuff, but when we do the hypothesis and do the conclusion, then we'll write it. But right now, for conditional, write that it's an if-then statement that relates a hypothesis to a conclusion. An if-then statement that relates a hypothesis to a conclusion. Now, the hypothesis is the if part of the statement, or the part that follows the if. The conclusion is the part that follows the then. So then when we read a conditional, we read it as if P, then Q, where P is the hypothesis, then Q is the conclusion. All right. So those are your vocab words at the start. We have more coming. You can register to vote if you're at least 18 years old. Okay. What follows the if? Well, if you are 18 years old, then you can register to vote. What's the hypothesis? You are at least 18 years old. Then the conclusion is you can register to vote. So you have to know how to find a hypothesis from a conclusion. If my teacher assigns an essay, then I will type it. What's the hypothesis for statement A? What follows the if statement? My teacher assigns an essay. That's a hypothesis. If I type my essay, then I will need to print it out. I type my essay is my hypothesis. Okay? So you got to know which is a hypothesis, which is a conclusion. Truth value. I am not worried about truth values and truth tables. Okay? But it's part of our vocab. So a truth value is a true or false statement according to whether the statement is true or false. A truth table lists all the possible combinations of truth values of two or more statements. I am not going to give you a truth value or a truth table. I'll give you truth values, but not truth tables because I don't like truth tables. I will not give you a truth table on a quiz. I will not give you a truth table on a test. Okay? And I don't even think I put one on the assignment. I think I got rid of all those questions because I just don't like them that much. But truth values are important. You got to know whether something is true or false. The statement is. So, if a number is even, then it's divisible by 2. True or false? True. If I would switch that statement around, if a number is divisible by 2, then it's even. Would that be also true? If a number is divisible by 2, then it's even. That would also be true. So no matter which way you state it, that would be a true statement. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Turning it around. If I turn a statement around, switch around the hypothesis and the conclusion, it would be called the converse. So a converse reverses the hypothesis and the conclusion of a conditional. The converse reverses the hypothesis and the conclusion of a conditional. A negation is a statement that has the opposite meaning, so it's a not something. So opposite meaning or not. So a negation is a statement that has the opposite meaning of the original statement. Then we're going to have an inverse and a contrapositive. So an inverse is in the same order as the original statement, it's just not for each. Obtained by negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion of the conditional. So if not P, then not Q. So a contrapositive is the not of the negate of the converse. So if not the conclusion, then not the hypothesis. So if not Q, then not P. So lots of vocab words today. Okay. So, here we go. If you play the trumpet, then you play a brass instrument. So, if you play the trumpet, then you play a brass instrument. Is that a true or false statement? True. That is definitely a true statement. If you play a brass instrument, then you play a trumpet. That's false. Because Lindsay, what do you play? She plays a tuba. Is it a brass instrument? Sure is. But it's not a trumpet. So that's a false statement. Okay, now I'm going to write a inverse. The inverse is if not a trumpet. So if you do not play a trumpet, then you do not play a brass instrument. If you don't play a trumpet, then you don't play a brass instrument. True or false? False. Because what does Lindsay play? Tuba. She doesn't play a trumpet, but she still plays a brass instrument, so that is false. What?
I feel like my trumpet self is getting attacked. 'Cause I play trumpet.
Yeah. So if you do not play a brass instrument, then you do not play the trumpet. True or false? That is true. Because if you don't play a brass instrument, you can't be playing the trumpet. All right. Write a truth table. Write the truth value of the inverse and contrapositive. We're going to do them for all, actually. If two whole numbers are both even, then the sum of the whole numbers is even. True or false in that one? If two whole numbers are even, then their sum is even. True or false? That's true. Let's look at the converse first. The converse. If the sum is even, then the numbers are even. True or false? If the sum is even, the sum of two numbers is even, then those two numbers have to be even. False. 1 and 3 are examples. 1 and 3 have a sum of 4, so the sum is 4, but that doesn't make them be even numbers. The inverse. Two numbers not even, then the sum is not even. If two numbers are not even, then their sum is not even. True or false? False. Just like 1 and 3 again. 1 and 3 are not even, but their sum is even. So that's a false statement. Contrapositive. If the sum is not even, then two numbers not even. If the sum of two numbers is not even, so if the sum of two numbers is odd, then the two numbers are not even. Then the two numbers are odd. That's kind of a false statement as well. Okay? Because the numbers have to be one even and one odd to make the sum odd. Okay? So false, false, false. A biconditional statement is true written this way and true written this way. So then you say if and only if. Okay? It's a combination of a conditional and its converse, resulting in the statement is P if and only if Q. So that's a vocab word. So if you're not writing right now, you missed the boat. Biconditional. Combination of a conditional and its converse, resulting compound statement, read if and only if. So it has to use the term if and only if in it. A marine biologist writes a conditional. If a seahorse gives birth, then it's a male. Since it is true that among seahorses, only males can become pregnant and give birth, should the marine biologist state this as a biconditional? So if a seahorse gives birth, then it's a male. If a seahorse is male, then it gives birth. Okay? Both the original statement and the conditional are true. So we can write it as a contrapositive or a biconditional. A seahorse gives birth if and only if it is a male. Okay? Or I could write it, a seahorse is a male if and only if it gives birth. I could write it two different ways. Okay? A triangle is equilateral if and only if it has three congruent sides. So one statement that comes from it is if a triangle is equilateral, then it has three congruent sides. The other statement says if a triangle has three congruent sides, then it is equilateral. Okay? So a little summary. A conditional, if P then Q. Converse switches around, if Q then P. Inverse, if not P then not Q. Contrapositive, if not Q then not P. And a biconditional. Hypothesis, if. Hypothesis, then if and only if. Conclusion. Okay? That is what it is all about today. So, the homework will take just a little longer because some of them are, just take a little bit more. So, I'm going to